please. Good evening, Mount Bethel. Good to be in God's house tonight, Wednesday night, September the 11th. And I want to pause right there. 23 years ago today, our world changed. And I don't think it'll ever go back. We are a nation of immigration, always have been, legal and illegal as well. But when people want to destroy what we're built on and yet they still want to be here, it bothers me. It seems like, to me, some people have forgotten what happened that day. And the best comment that I've heard made about this is they say, how should we respond today to 9/11? We should have the same heart about us that we had September 12th, 2001. We were a nation together that day. We certainly were. And just pray for our nation, pray for all those that were affected by it. Some 3,000 died immediately, and then we got drug into a 20-year war, which could have been done in 5, I think, but it is what it is. Pray for all the local churches. Pray for our educators, the kids. A lot of COVID going around. It can still be very dangerous to some folks. We want to welcome those folks tonight that are looking in on YouTube. Always good to have you with us. Ron, would you lead us in prayer tonight as we start our study?
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time together in your word, Lord. Please lead us in understanding. I praise your mighty and holy name. We thank you for your many blessings. Ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, Sister Pam's going to read chapter 8, starting at verse number 7 for us. And
And Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick. And it was told him, saying, The man of God is come hither. And the king said unto Hazael, Take a present in thine hand, and go meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him, and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels, burden, and came and stood before him and said, Thy son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to thee, saying, Shall I recover of this disease? And Elisha said unto him, Go, say unto him, Thou mayest certainly recover, howbeit the Lord has showed me that he shall surely die. And he settled his countenance steadfastly until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why weepeth my Lord? And he answered, Because I know the evil that thou wilt do unto the children of Israel. Their strongholds wilt thou set on fire, and their young men wilt thou slay with the sword, and wilt dash their children, and rip up their women with child. And Hazael said, But what is thy servant, a dog, that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord hath showed me that thou shalt be king over Syria. So he departed from Elisha, and came to his master, who said to him, What said Elisha to thee? And he answered, He told me that thou shouldest surely recover. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth, and dipped it in water, and spread it on his face, so that he died. And Hazael reigned in his stead. And in the 5th year of Joram the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being then king of Judah, Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. 32 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he promised him, to give him alway a light, and to his children. In his days Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah, and made a king over themselves. So Joram went over to Zaor, and all the chariots with him, and he arose by night, and smote the Edomites which compassed him about, and the captains of the chariots, and the people fled into their tents. Yet Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. And the rest of the acts of Joram, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Joram slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Hazael his son reigned in his stead. In the 12th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, did Ahaziah, the son of Jehoram, king of Judah, begin to reign. 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri, king of Israel. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab, and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. And he went with Joram the son of Ahab to war against Hazael, king of Syria, in Ramoth Gilead. And the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Syria. And Ahaziah the son of Joram, king of Judah, went down to see Joram the son of Ahab in Jezreel, because he was sick.
We certainly see some things take place tonight. We see the fulfilling of a prophecy from 1 Kings chapter 19, when Elijah was running from Jezebel. And you remember there when he was in the cave and how the Lord came to him and all. And he said, Elijah, you will anoint Jehu, you will also anoint Hazael, and you will also go to Elisha to take your place. Now, I wanted Tony to come down here so I could debate with him. What takes place is, did Elijah go and anoint him first, Tony?
I don't know.
Because it implies now that he goes and does the same thing. See, the thing that troubled Elisha so much here is he knew what Hazael was going to do. He knew that he could not change the prophecy of God, but I want you to understand something. Up to this point, Hazael could have changed his ways. You see what I'm saying? He would have still been anointed the king of Syria, but he would be used of God. But he still, I want you to realize, had a choice to make in the matter. And, of course, the matter that he did was not a good one. It gets kind of, I'm glad Brother Ron brought each one of us a sheet tonight of these kings, so you can keep up with them a little bit. It really gets confusing tonight because there's two kings, one of Judah and one of Israel, with the same given name. And we have to be careful with that. We also see in the background that woman. And if we do get over into chapter 9 tonight, we're going to see the final end of Miss Jezebel. Not only that, but it also fulfills the prophecy of what took place. It was told where she would be when she died. So what we're looking at here now tonight, it's really amazing. Elisha goes to Damascus. I want you to know something. If nothing else, Elisha is a much more public prophet, at least in the way that it seems, than Elijah was. It says that he came to Benhadad, the king of Syria was sick, and he told him, saying, the man of God has come hither. Well, doesn't it seem strange to you folks that the king of Syria would ask for the man of God from Israel? And that's what he does. And the king said unto Hazael, take in thy hand a present and go. Meet the man of God and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, shall I recover of this disease? So Hazael went to meet him. Now see, Hazael at this point is not the king. We don't know either, and it's one of those unknowns. Ted, help me. We don't know what Hazael had in his plan, in his background. This assassination, as we would call it, to take over. All we do know is this. Back in 1 Kings 19, God told Elijah Hazael would be king. He also said Jehu would be king. He also said Elisha would replace him. Now,
somewhere, Pastor, that Hazael, that I forget which king it was. I think it was the one, the Syrian king, the Assyrians, that said he was the son of a nobody.
that's right.
Yeah, that he really had no royal line.
He had no royal line. That's a good point. And also, too, you got to realize it's been about 15 years since that chapter 19. A lot of things have taken place. But here he said he'd take a present in your hand. Now, Pam, if you come up with a good note that you can refresh us with, that, you just lay it on us. And Ruth, you do the same. So Hazael went to meet with him, and he didn't take a present in his hand, did he, Ron? He took 40 camel loads. I ain't never seen 40 camels in one place at the same time anyways. But they were a pack animal that could carry a lot. But it showed the respect he had.
He was hoping to buy his healing.
Did y'all hear that? He was hoping to pay for his healing. Oh, if people could just learn even today the gift of healing that comes from God. And I told this to somebody Monday. I was out on the lawnmower for 3 or 4 hours. And I think back where God has guided me and where he has protected me. And how even in an uncertain year like 2024, how he has blessed me and Pam. I mean, it's just out of a storm, you know, there has been plenty. Out of frustration, there's been blessing. And then recovery. It's just, you just can't outdo God. But the thing that I want all of you to realize, it's not how much you put in the plate Sunday morning when it comes around. And I know you love to teach them little, but it's not how many times you've stood to teach or how many times I've stood to preach over 30 years. It's that God loves us. Our message Sunday morning was as simple as it could be. God cares. God still cares. And we'll have part 2 of that this coming week. We hear so much of I call it nonchalant, people that say it and go on and don't realize who they're trying to influence. When they say God is not doing this or God is not doing that, they don't know the same God that I know. Pam got a wonderful doctor's report. You know, last year we had a troublesome doctor's report. You know, our lives change in a moment, and you know this being a nurse. When that girl got up, went out of that room and came back and said, I want them to look at this to see if it's what they want, I know she saw something. By law or legally, she can't tell me, you know, because the doctor has to be the one. But I knew they found something when they found that aneurysm. Well, my life changed that day. Well, how many times have we had it said, there's a spot? There's something don't look right. You know what I'm saying? And doesn't it just change? Every one of us have had family with heart disease and cancer and different sickness and things of this nature. Keep praying for Don Whitener. He had his first chemo on Monday. I called him last night. He didn't get back with me, so I'm not sure how he did well the first day, but a lot of times that stuff, it takes the second day before it kicks in. And Ron, you may know that from experience. I know some others that do. But anyway, God was in control no matter what Elisha was going to do. Elisha didn't want and didn't go with his hand out wanting a bounty. You saw what happened to Gehazi. Elijah turned it away. I don't need this. But then when he walked away, Gehazi followed him on up the road, and you saw what it cost him. So here now, verse number 9, Hazael went to meet him, took a present with him, even every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels burden, and came and stood before him. Thy son Benhadad, king of Syria, has sent me to thee, saying, shall I recover of this disease? Now I want you to see how careful Elisha is with his words. The disease was not going to kill him. And that's what he points out. He chooses his words carefully. Elisha said unto him, go and say unto him, thou mayest certainly recover, howbeit the Lord has showed me that he shall surely die. And then verse number 11 says something. And some of you see this with people a lot of time, whether it's fear, anger, joy, or whatever. He settled his countenance steadfastly until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. And I just hesitated over that verse. The message that he was going to give to Hazael, it was true. But he also knew what the dominoes down the road were. You're going to take his life. You're going to become king. And it troubled him so much. Sometimes I'm asked in the meetings with families or groups, and I tell Pam the hardest thing for me to do is I have to pray. I have a meeting like this coming tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Hadn't even told her yet. You have to speak the truth in love. You can't sugarcoat it for them. It is what it is. And that's what he's had to do right here. And the Bible says the man of God wept. I mean, it troubled his heart in such a way. And Hazael said, why weepest thou, my Lord? Now you got to realize this is the Syrian again, really with the respect that he has for him. Because I know the evil that thou wilt do to the children of Israel. Their strongholds wilt thou set on fire, their young men wilt thou slay with the sword, and wilt dash their children and rip their women with the child. And Hazael, he couldn't understand this. But what? Is the servant a dog that he should do this great thing? And then he says something, I want you really to get this. I've got it underlined. The Lord has showed me that thou shalt be king over Syria. In other words, Elisha wasn't a magic man. He wasn't a man that had the sweet sauce. You know, you've seen the old shows where they come in with a $9 bottle of this will cure anything. You know how it was, the old traveling medicine man. And he could lay blessings or he could speak cursing. But you could see he did not do it without cost. It upset his countenance so that Hazael could see it on his face. Now think about that. Because he said, I know what you're going to do as king. Well, Hazael would say right then, well, I've got no ambition to be king. We don't know, like I said a minute ago, right, Ted, what was working in the background. We don't know what army he had. We don't know what men in the dark or otherwise. But certainly, when Elisha said this, it hit a nerve too. But it troubled Elisha enough that it changed his countenance. Folks, we have to tell the people the truth and love from God, whether it's good or bad. And some people hem-haw around. That daddy's word. JD'd always say hem-haw here, hem-haw there. Y'all have heard that all your life. Just tell me what's on your mind. So he did. Verse number 14. So he departed from Elisha, and he came to his master, who said to him, What saith Elisha to thee? And he answered, He told me that thou shalt surely recover. What? He gave him some good news. How long was that good news for, Ginger? About a day. Just about a day. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took thick cloth, dipped it in water, and spread it on his face so that he died, and Hazael reigned in his stead. So I guess he smothered him, drowned him, or whatever with the water, I guess.
Suffocated him. Suffocated him.
Yeah. And it says he reigned in his stead. So there were some people there that helped establish him immediately. So that's when I say, Ted, again, coming back to you, I believe he had something working in the background. He had some support otherwise. And in the 5th year of Joram,
Wait, so he killed him so he could be king? Or?
he did. He assassinated him. That's how he took his life. And see, that's what was troubling. I'm glad you paused us on that. I want to make sure you understand. He took his life. He went into him. He gave him the good news. The disease is not going to kill you. But he didn't say this, did he? But I'm going to.
Because he told him, Elisha told him he was going to be king.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And see, he knew this, because remember, go back to 1 Kings 19:19. When Elijah was in the cave and God came to him, he wasn't in the fire, the earthquake, the storm, or anything else, but he was in a still small voice. But when he left that place, he told him where to go. He said, go to Damascus. I want you to anoint Jehu. I want you to anoint Hazael. And then I want you to go see Elisha, who will come and be in your stead. So
If he hadn't told him, he wouldn't have killed him, probably? Or?
I
think the point was he
I think something was working in the background that's not written there. Because it says they instilled him so quickly, he reigned in his stead. So, I mean, it happened pretty quick. What do you think, Ruth?
I'm not following that he committed suicide. God's already said he's going to die. God honors what he said.
He didn't commit suicide, he killed him. He murdered him.
But it doesn't, it just says that it came to him. Who is he then?
Hazel.
He is,
Yeah, Hazel, see, Hazel was the spokesperson for him. He was close to the king. The king sent him out to meet Elisha, who was on his way to Damascus, and took gifts to him. Now, like I said, we can't read between the lines. I've asked Ted twice, we've hinted at it. Ron, what do you think? I think there was something brewing in the background with Hazael all along.
It happened too quick.
If that's right, because it says clearly, and Hazael reigned in his stead. He was installed immediately to be king.
Well, he was a, you find out later, he was a thorn in both Judah and Israel's side.
Oh, exactly.
And so he must have been an incredible military leader.
Well, that's why it troubled
Yeah.
Elisha so much.
Yeah.
enough that his countenance changed. He said, I have to tell you this, and it's going to come to be because God said, and he could not change the prophecy. He could not change it.
He knew that Hazael was going to set fire and
All of these things, and kill the children and the women. He knew this. It was going to be. So I just asked, and I don't know if somebody's got a note there. Tony, do you have an idea what kind of death this was? He just suffocated him with a wet cloth?
John said he suffocated him.
That's what it was.
He said it had a thick bed quilt made even heavier when soaked with water, and he suffocated the king.
So now, Elisha knew this as Elijah did. God's word is sure. He could not change that prophecy. And he knew this would bring hardship upon Israel. Now you got to realize Israel and Judah brought the hardship on themselves. And that's what I say, just right on that motorcycle lawnmower. Some of the stuff in my life I brought on myself. Ted, would you say the same thing? Not about me, I mean about you. I'm just joking. Well, sometimes our wounds are self-inflicted. I think we have to realize that. We say, I give Robbie that 8-second rule. I'm going to have to turn it into about 15, it looks like. So he and I are praying on that. No, we all need to think before we speak. And we can say, and Ginger, can you take back words spoken in haste?
No, that's what I prayed for.
Don't we all? I have got a,
Say something I'll regret.
I've got a little note right here, if I can find it quick. Basically, it says words spoken in a moment can destroy a whole day.
Whole life.
Or even a whole life. No, I'm just mean for the immediate,
It can do a whole life.
just for the immediate damage that it can do to relationships and families. But even here, at the extent of what Elisha was saying, it's going to change the destiny of Israel and Judah. And you're going to kill many of those kids and women and some of the soldiers. So now we see that this was prophesied of and spoken to Elisha, given to Elisha to do. Verse 16 says that in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, here's that other son we were talking about, Tony.
That's where you are right here, Joram. Right here.
That's where we are.
We got a lot to go.
Oh, yeah. And the king of Israel, Jehoshaphat being the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign.
The 9th one.
So it really, remember, we've said this all along without getting into the mathematics. There were many more kings in Israel than there were in Judah. The ones in Judah walked closer to God. They didn't always walk as close as they should, but they had more good kings than Israel did. It says 32 years old he was when he began to reign. He reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. And he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab. Why? Because the daughter of Ahab was his wife. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. So that means Jezebel was her mother. More, not necessarily, but probably. Okay. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David, his servant's sake, as he promised to always give him a light unto his children. And then here comes Edom again. They just can't get away from those folks down in Edom. The days of Edom revolted under the hand of Judah and made king over themselves. Remember, in the last chapter, they'd send, I think it was 100,000 rams and sheep to pay a tribute to have their, and then certainly when one king died, they would always try to get out from underneath that. But 22 says, Edom revolted from under the hand of Judah unto this day. Then Libnah revolted at the same time. Folks, it was a time of unrest like it had never been seen before.
See that marriage between Athaliah and Jehoram, that was supposed to bring...
Well, all right, he brings a point, and then there's going to be a marriage, and when it brings them together, it's almost like they're trying to bring Israel and Judah back together.
Right. But then it led Judah into Baal worship, and so God punished them by Edom and Libnah revolting.
Exactly.
So it was more of a punishment.
So even if they did it with a good measure of confidence to try to reconcile, this is what? I don't believe that was their goal at all. I don't believe they had a plan hatched out to say, we're going to bring the nation back together.
Well, Ahab and Jehoshaphat had helped each other, and
In spite of each other.
right. But see, once Jehu entered the picture and killed both kings, then the whole thing fell apart.
And it does fall apart. Verse 23, it says, and the rest of the acts of Joram, all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And Joram slept with his fathers and was buried with his father in the city of David. And Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his stead, which this would have been the grandson of Ahab by now, I think. And 22 years old was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 1 year in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri. Now, Omri was the very first one that tried to set up government in Samaria to have, another place for at least government control and whatever it could be. And he walked in the way of the house of Ahab and did evil in the sight of the Lord, as did the house of Ahab, for he was the son-in-law of what? He was the son-in-law of the house of Ahab. I'm going to tell you, folks, Ahab's reign, he's dead. But I'm telling you, the influence that he had was so traumatic to what it did to the people. Now, he possibly, Tony, when he married her, they had shipping and wealth there in Tyre and Sidon. There might have been a plan there to bring them together. But all she did is brought the gods of Baal to him and destroyed him. And it's evident by his actions, Ron, he didn't need much influence to lead him away. And the Bible says in verse 28, and he went with Joram the son of Ahab to the war against Hazael. See, here we go. The king of Syria and Ramoth-Gilead, and the Syrians wounded Joram. And King Joram went back to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him at Ramah when he fought against Hazael, king of Israel. And Uzziah, the son of Jehoram, the king of Judah, went down to see Joram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was sick. It just sounds like a house of cards just ready to collapse. There was no true loyalty. Did you hear any? I want to ask you this now. Did you hear any glorifying God in the whole story? Not one bit. The only one that even asked about God was a pagan king. Of course, now Elisha spoke, but when he spoke, it was a very difficult prophecy. Oh, you're not going to die from this sickness, but the man that you sent to visit me is going to kill you.
You think he got all that 40 camels of gold?
What do you think, Tony?
Whatever it was, he got all
You think he took the gift? You think Elisha took the 40 camels and all those burdens of goods?
Yeah, I think
Seemed like he had to, because by now, remember in the 2 chapters before, the ministry was growing. And the sons of the prophet said, we need a bigger place.
Right.
And they built that place. Remember the axe head and all that. They built it near the Jordan there. They had to have another place.
Well, he was pretty adamant with Naaman whenever he came with his gifts and said he didn't want it.
That's what I was
So,
saying. All times
but he didn't say that here. So I think,
Right.
yeah, I think he kept it.
I think
rejected it, so I didn't know if this
that
time
it seems like he did. Okay, Tony, do you want to read chapter 9 for us?
I can.
I wish you had a mic. Take him one.
I do have a mic. It's you.
Take him one back there. Yeah, we're going to let him read.
he does have mine.
Did you get your ears cleaned out?
I did. But no, it's not just me. I want the people that are listening in tonight to be able to hear too.
I know. Right. All right, can you hear me, Miss Pam?
Yes.
Well, okay, all right. And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets and said unto him, gird up thy loins and take this flask of oil in thine hand and go to Ramoth-Gilead. And when thou comest there, find Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in and make him arise up from among his brethren and take him to an inner chamber. Then take the flask of oil and pour it on his head and say, thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door and flee and tarry not. So the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth-Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, unto which of all of us? And he said, to thee, O captain. And he arose and went into the house, and he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, thus saith the Lord God of Israel,
I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab every male, bond and free, in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah.
Pause just a minute. There's not many times in the Bible that you hear as such a strong declaration against a family name as
that's
this.
true.
Huh? He said, you're gone.
Yeah.
He said, finally, the time has come. Ahab's, and I just made the comment, and I've been a prophet a minute ago, about how widespread his influence was. God said, finally, enough of Ahab. And now Ahab's dead, like I said, but Jezebel is still doing her deals.
Right.
And the children and grandchildren of Ahab are coming into place, and they're just as bad as he was.
Right.
But God finally says, enough.
So
Somebody
now the
preached a
question-
message one time, God's 3 deadlines.
Yeah.
And one of them was when God says, you're done. This is it.
So why don't you think Athaliah wasn't killed at the same time?
Good question. But then again, this is my other question, and this is what a lot of people hate to hear coming from a teacher or a preacher. Why now? Why couldn't it have been sooner and saved so many lives?
Yeah, true.
But, you know, we don't have that answer, so I just throw that out there. But go ahead, you see what I'm saying? But when God says, Jeroboam, you're cut off. When he says to the other one here, Baasha, the son of Ahab, you're cut off. That means no more heirs, no more nothing. There's not just a remembrance, and that's all.
Yeah.
And so it was strong. And finally he says, there'll be no more of Ahab.
Right, but then we did still have some more of Ahab with Athaliah. But, I mean, and the dog shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of his Lord, and one said unto him, Is all well? Why came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, Ye know the man and his communication. And they said, It is false. Tell us now. And he said, Thus and thus spoke he to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then they hastened and took every man his garment and put it under him on the top of the stairs and blew with trumpets, saying, Jehu is king.
All right, now pause again. You see now what my question is, did Elijah anoint him?
Well, Elisha certainly did. I mean,
Not Elijah.
No, Elijah was instructed to in chapter 19.
yeah, I know, but I don't see how he could have.
Because it's almost like Jehu has no idea at all.
I know.
In other words, if he had come to him, they made a big deal of it because like when David was anointed, he went in the picture. It was the 7 sons that were men. Oh, and I've got a child who's tending to the sheep. Well, that's the one he wanted. But here it's almost like Jehu has, do you agree with me?
Yeah.
He has no inkling that this is going to take place.
I don't think he did.
So once again, I won't say it's incorrect, but it does lead a question to say if Elijah went to Damascus to each of the 3, David was anointed king, but he didn't become king for how many years?
30 some on, yeah.
See what I'm saying? So if he had been anointed by Elijah, you think there would be some reference here saying, oh, that prophet did come to me 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But we don't see that. See, that's what I'm saying. All right, go ahead, brother.
All right. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had kept Ramoth-Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael, king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael, king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it be your minds, then let none go forth now, nor escape out of the city to go tell it in Jezreel. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel, and he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Joram said, Take an horseman and send to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? So there went one on horseback to meet him and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, The messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Then he sent out a second on horseback, who came to them, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu answered, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn behind me. And the watchman told, saying, He came even unto them, and cometh not again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. And Joram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. And it came to pass, when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace? So long as the harlotries of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many. And Joram turned his hands and fled, and said to Ahaziah, There is treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength, and smote Joram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sank down in his chariot. Then said Jehu to Bidkar, his captain, Take up and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember how that when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, saith the Lord, and I will requite thee on this plot, saith the Lord. Now therefore take and cast him on the plot of ground according to the word of the Lord. But when Ahaziah the king of Judah saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house, and Jehu followed after him, and said, Smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the ascent of Gur, which is by Ibleam, and he fled to Megiddo and died there. And his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem, and buried him in his sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, began Ahaziah to reign over Judah. And when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face and attired her head and looked out through a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Had Zimri peace? Who slew his master? I'm sorry, I didn't read that right. And she said, Had Zimri peace, who slew his master? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is on my side?
Pause there 1 second. Jehu is wanting to find out if Israel and or Judah is on his side. They've come together against him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's confusion is what I'm saying. In other words, it's not a natural possession of father to son openly, and the nation accepted it. He didn't ask for it, it doesn't appear. But it's come to him, so he's going to take it. And so now, who is on my side? And you've got both of these other kings that are debating on how to approach this and what to do. You got the real...
Yeah, I don't think Jehu, though, was supposed to slew the king of Judah. I think he was just supposed to slew...
No, that's right. But they were in consort together.
Yeah.
And how can you attack one without the other?
Well, he could have let him go, but he didn't.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? So they're fighting against themselves. What it's doing is this: dividing the people. Who are we going to support to be king? All right, go ahead.
And he lifted up his face to the window and said, Who is on my side? Who? And there looked out at him 2 or 3 eunuchs, and he said, Throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trod her underfoot. And when he was come in, and he did eat and drink, and said, Go see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel. And the carcass of Jezebel shall be as refuse upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, This is Jezebel.
I said this with the last chapter. 6 carried right over into 7 for the completeness. 9 covers over to 10. Now, we've been talking about the inheritance of the reign. I want you to look at this verse number 1 of chapter 10. Ahab had 70 sons. That's right. She almost choked on her water. 70. Could you imagine putting down an uprising like that, Tony? And these last 7 verses, especially 6, they all knew who and what Jezebel was. But actually it comes to be, as verse 36 said, that the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be done on the face of the field of a portion of Jezreel. In other words, the prophecy that Elijah said came true some 15 years later. It was a very confusing chapter, to say the least, but it's God cleaning house is all I can say. How long does God allow countries today to go? I say this before, I say it tonight. Don't we see things happening that we thought a generation before could never be? Do we not see people? I was on a conference call today with some people from all around the world, and people are begging for pastors. I didn't know it, but there's a website on Facebook, and it lists the different countries that are looking for pastors. One of the men from South Africa brought it up, and then I mentioned it to Randy Guadalupe. He's, oh yeah, Pastor, I have looked at it. He said, we Filipinos even talked about, can we go and pastor in America? I said, you'd better not leave your people. You see what I'm saying? But he had seen that website. I had not. I've not been on it yet. But we know that 1,500 pastors a month in America are leaving the ministry.
We may need them. We may need the Filipinos to come.
Well, will God not send missionaries from all around the world to America? It's a sad statement, but it's a true one. Whew. Lord help us. I don't know. But then again, can we continue in willful sin and openness, and we don't even call sin today? One of the men on there said, Pastor Mike, what if you mentioned such a strong statement as Nehemiah made in chapter 8? I said, they're probably looking for a pastor at Mount Bethel. Really, people don't want to hear the firmness of it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't live in fear of that. My goodness, y'all can ask me to leave any time. But you know what Randy said in the Philippines? He said, we don't have that fear. I said, what are you talking about? Oh, no. When God plants a pastor in the Philippines, God moves him. They don't have an election and vote him out. I said, oh, my goodness, you talk about saving some churches and hard feelings. We've been in a situation where the church voted every year on every office in the church, including the pastor. Now, in our bylaws, you've been there. You know what I'm saying? And I don't like it. I think the man of God ought to know when he's called, where he's called, and the people should know it as well. Don't y'all agree? I think most of you agree with that. But to put him up there, other little country church, I guess you'd say, I don't like the idea of running somebody against somebody. See, y'all agree? Y'all have seen it, and it damages people in such a way. It divides, that's right. But that's what God is doing here, and He's setting it up because now it's further on down the road. If you will look at the paper He gave you, when He gets down to Zedekiah, the one I preached out of Jeremiah the other day, when He says it's finished, that was His finishing. Right there at the bottom. What happened? He got carried away. I think his eyes were gouged out. He was blinded.
And he had to watch his son being killed.
And you see what I'm saying tonight? When God says enough, one day after a while, God's going to look over at his son there on the throne beside him and say, my son, the time has come. And the Lord's coming back. I'm not even going to go back over that chapter. It kind of spoke for itself. Because here's the thing, 3 times it asked, is it peace, is it peace, is it peace? Well, they said, this man is not a man of peace. And Tony made a very good point. We don't know that Jehu had come against the king of Israel at this point, right? But you got to remember, Hazael was up there causing some of the influence. He named his name. So,
do you think Jezebel knew she was going to die? My note says that she wanted to die like a Phoenician queen, made up. So that's why she painted her face so that she wouldn't look tired. She wanted to die like a Phoenician queen.
okay, it says that, but it also says something else. The last part of verse number 34. They were not going to treat her like the prophecy of her death was going to be. And what does it simply say? For she is a king's daughter. And it doesn't go on to say anything, but Pam, to answer your question, I believe they were supposed to treat her as such. But when all they could find were the skull, the feet, and the palms of her hand, they wasn't much to treat there. I mean, she was a...
He must have not. I wonder how long he feasted for them dogs to already eat her totally up. How long did he feast?
Well, the question would be how many dogs were in that pack.
Feasting that they
It didn't take long. I mean, I don't know, but like I said, it speaks for itself.
whole body.
Well, you see what was left.
He feasted.
The jaw, the feet. Let's see. No more of her was her skull, feet, and the palms of her hand. Once again, as God made a decision before, the decision was carried out here. I mean, she was a thorn in... If Elisha would weep when he had to go and talk to Hazael about what he was going to do to Israel and Judah, imagine what he felt that Ahab and Jezebel had done to Israel through the years. And then I just read verse 10, chapter 10, verse 1 for you, had 70 sons. Jehu wrote letters and sent to Samaria to the rulers of Jezreel, to the elders, what? And to them that brought up Ahab's children, saying, as soon as this letter cometh to you, seeing your master's sons are with you, there are with you chariots and horses, a fenced city also and armor. Look even out the best and meetest what? Of your master's sons, and get him to his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. He knew there was going to be a disruption. He knew there would be. But they were exceedingly afraid. Behold, 2 kings stood not before him. How shall we stand? And he was over that house. I mean, I don't know how long it took. But God's judgment was sure. Here, once again, how long is it going to take to settle this with 70 sons who would think they should be king? Up here it said very clearly, in the 11th year of Joab, the son of Ahab, Isaiah began to reign. And when Jezebel heard of it, she painted her face. What is tired her head? What does that mean? Did she, I guess, fixed it up or something? Adorned it, okay. Okay. Like one of them old bumblebee haircuts? Well, that's what I thought of. Oh, jeweled it. Oh, okay. All right. But see, she was looking to find favor, I think, because one of the grandsons was going to now be king once again. But what really happened, and you see something else too, they met at the place of Naboth. Naboth was brought up again. In other words, it happened just as God said it would happen. 15 years later, and it happened. Whatever, I don't know the exact timing. Here's what I think in closing tonight. I don't know that if enough people knows about the truth of God to know to fear God. Do y'all know how many times a year I'm asked, preacher, do you really believe that book? From beginning to end. From Genesis to Revelation. Yes, I believe that book. My hope, my salvation, my redemption is all in the Word of God. I'm certainly not been close to being perfect. I don't mean that, or being good or otherwise. The Bible says there's none good. But God has got a forgiving heart. And I'm glad that I have felt the mercies of His grace as He has forgiven me.
I have a question about the kings. So if you go straight across, they're the king of Judah is the same as the one at the same time.
That's what it's saying.
Reigned at the
And
same
if you'll notice, there's many more on the right than there was on the left.
So from here down, is that where they joined
Oh, yeah.
together?
No, they haven't. No. That's where it's getting ready to go. When you get to the very bottom, that's when they get carried away into Babylon.
More under here.
You see Zedekiah there at the bottom?
Yeah.
That's when they get carried away.
Israel is carried away by the Assyrians.
Yeah,
About 125 years before Judah.
that's right. Before the
Over here.
see, you had the Assyrians and the Babylonians there together. And then Syria was always in the mix. Never a good part of that mix either. So, yeah. No, they get carried away at Zedekiah,
So there's no more kings down on this side?
evidently. I mean, you see the time.
Yeah, they were carried into captivity. The northern
Israel
kingdom.
assimilated by Assyria. So that's when they got carried.
Well, see, Israel was carried away first.
Syria, and they got carried to
See, when Sennacherib, what was his name?
Yeah, Sennacherib.
Sennacherib, yeah. When he came, when he was standing at the door, he had already took Israel in. Israel was already carried away. They knew it was going to happen. Hezekiah knew it. Josiah was so righteous, it was coming, but it said it would not happen in his generation. So God parlayed it. He kept it off until then. You got to realize something, like he said there earlier in chapter 8. For the mercies of David, the promise he had made to him, he would not destroy Israel at this time.
So
So-
they got carried into Syria.
Yes, they did. And it's so sad that it happened that way.
I love this man. I love this. I love this. Thank you. It really it helps.
Let's pray before we leave tonight. We'll start back up in chapter 10 Sunday night. I've not been made aware of any immediate needs in the church. Have y'all? I will say this, blessing the church tonight. We raised $700 Sunday morning for that family. They said it couldn't come at a better time. They had no idea that we knew anything or did, and y'all just have to trust me. It was a church family, and they were blessed, and that's just where I'm going to leave it. The only reason I say with a group of about 45 or 50 to raise 700 unannounced, that's a pretty good gift for a small church. Robbie says it, and so does Pastor Mike. This is the givingest bunch of people that I've ever seen. When the need is called upon, these folks have a great heart for people. Absolutely. Ted Farmer's going to dismiss us in prayer tonight.